The Relic project is a creation of Ford Chicago. A relic is an object, custom, or belief that survives from an earlier time. They are often historic and hold sentimental value. The Relic project has two main purposes. The first is to help everyone understand the origins of relics, and the second is to illuminate our core beliefs in the hope of expanding the kingdom in the 21st century. The Relic project comes with 10 distinct titles, and we hope you'll take the time to watch them all. For this video for the Relic project, I want to ask a question before I begin. It's one that's kind of haunted me for years. What's the point of Christian education? What's the point of education within the church? I'm sure many who have been around the church will say, well, it's for disciple making. Well, what does that really mean? And is that really appropriate? Because education is supposed to create change, both change in a person's thinking as well as in their actions. And so it's a wrestling point for me, because I wonder how much of our programming has actually done that, has actually either changed the person or the family, or has created a Christian who can help another Christian come to know their faith. I know a lot of people who've gone through Sunday school, and I know a lot of people who have created opportunities for themselves within the church because they wanted to train up other people. But I always wonder, has change happened because of that? And where did all this come from? When did the church, who was supposed to share the good news into the world, start thinking that it was also in the education business? Well, as it turns out, I can go into the history and see that it started with an Episcopal movement. That is, the bishops were training up their leaders, their pastors, their priests in different locations. And so they wanted to make sure they had all of the right information as they shepherded others. And then it would move on from that to a monastic movement, which is really about folks who become sequestered and learn in really a cloister of individuals kind of coming together, and they would learn from one another, but also do some form of work activity together and kind of relate God into that. It would grow out of that to this scholastic moment in which they would start educational institutions. Schools would become about Christian schools in particular here in America. And that would evolve obviously into more trainings and different opportunities for young kids. And so getting more information in people's hands, hoping that that information would somehow change them and change the world. And then, of course, that would have to grow somewhat, because you have to have staggered levels of education. And the highest level would be the seminarian, who's somebody who would truly come to understand God and know all of this other information that kind of led up to this moment, so that they would be effective in knowing who God is and how to articulate that well. Now the question is, has that worked? Has the body of Christ been improved because of all the education? Now, it's interesting to note that none of this is biblical. You won't find it in the Bible that you should hold classes every Sunday for little children. Nor will you find the children's moment on the Sunday morning that so many people fell in love with back in the day, right? Oh, we'll have the kids come forward, and the little Johnny or Jill will say something silly, and the pastor will laugh it off, and we'll all have a good laugh at the moment of that around a topic. And at least I can understand what he's telling the kids, so then I can take something away from it, because I don't understand what the seminarian is saying to us. Crazy, isn't it? Education moments, education in the church, and is it really creating the change that we're hoping happens? Now, the change that was supposed to take place was birthed around 1780 by Robert Rikers. Now, Robert Rikers was actually a newspaper guy. He was writing newspapers and felt that the best way to help educate folks was to get them to learn in an educational setting. And so he provided for that educational setting to teach poor children who didn't have access to good education. You see, back in that day, not everybody got to go to school. Only certain people got to go to school. And so he thought, well, you know what, the church could do a really good job at educating everyone. We could educate the poor and those who are down and out, and we could help people, because education does lift people out of poverty. It was a great movement of God, no doubt about it. But it gave birth to something that became less effective. And that seems to happen a lot with relics. They were formed for a purpose, but then the purpose goes away and we don't really know why we do it. We just always have done it that way, so we kind of continue along this way. So what does the Bible teach us? Have you ever asked yourself, what is the way in which Jesus taught, and how did people catch the good news? Well, the first way was they walked with Jesus. You see, most education was done by being with someone for a period of time. This happens in many other parts of the world still today. If you want to be a pastor, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to seminary or get any deep Bible school knowledge or even be part of a small group. You just need to be somebody who wants to commit their life to Christ, and you're willing to walk beside someone and do whatever they did, almost like the rabbi teaching those who would follow him. In many ways, this might be the best way to learn. You watch someone else do it, you get the chance to do it, then they critique it, then you do it, and then you go find somebody else to teach it to. It's very experiential, but it actually works better than some of the book learning, because having all the knowledge upstairs obviously hasn't moved the kingdom forward here in America. In fact, the church is shrinking. And people who are claiming to be Christian is actually less of the population than it was even 100 years ago. People learned from older, more seasoned individuals. And as a result of that, the movement grew. Maybe we ought to throw away the relic of Christian education, thinking that Sunday morning the kids need to be separated, and maybe we need to have them be with the adults and do what the adults do, not so that they can learn to be ushers or lectern speaking individuals, but maybe, just maybe, so that they could become followers of Jesus Christ and be able to articulate their faith in a way that reaches people so the kingdom can expand. Now that's an education I want to pass on.